Mr. Novak, how you going?
Hi, how are you? Living La Vida local.
Living La Vida local. What do we mean by
Living
that?
living La Vida local. Well, we thought this morning we'd donate a segment to tell people a little about the northern beaches of Sydney, Australia. Um,
Yes.
I think we always talk about we often talk about real estate, technical side of real estate, helping buyers, helping sellers, helping. But probably thought it may help people just explaining a little bit about the northern beaches of Sydney, geographically, where we are, um, the benefits of the area, the suburbs in the area, and what they offer.
Yeah.
Because you know what, it's just nice for people to know. I like to know about different
And
parts of
and
Australia and Sydney and stuff.
and from the outskirts, it probably doesn't look like the most desirable place if you take away the water. Like it's the infrastructure. Traditionally, there's no train, there's no airport, there's no tunnel, so access to the city is not the easiest.
Yep.
A lot of buyers agents sort of steer away because he doesn't necessarily have the rental return on a lot of residential, but it's just got good old fashioned growth. And it's basically, I always say, like, you look at the Northern Beaches growth now, and we've got the worst infrastructure. And infrastructure you can improve on, you can develop, we can add hospitals, add the education. But the one thing you can't take away is the water. So I think it's very underestimated, the Northern Beaches, for many reasons.
It is, and I guess first of all, where we actually are for the viewers that aren't Northern Beaches is so Sydney City. If you head north from Sydney City, so with Sydney, you can head west, which is the Greater Sydney, which is where most of the population is. You can head south, which is down your sort of Maroubra way, hard east from the city. There's just a narrow little area called the eastern
Drum roll
suburbs
to the
of Sydney.
east.
Oh yeah, and then if you head north, it's actually quite restricted. Even our northern peninsula is restricted because we've got another waterway called the Pittwater. So if you head north of our city, there'll be a finger that'll take you all the way up to the northern beaches, but it doesn't actually go anywhere else. So
Yeah.
it's really a peninsula. It's really dedicated, and we forget about that when you live in it. When we talk about it, it's like, oh yeah. But the great thing is it's quite isolated from any further north because it's that finger. So it's easier for us to get into the city. So you can jump in a bus, or there's one main road called Pittwater Road. What are you laughing at?
No, Todd said the sound effects are working. Thanks, Michael. Todd's on. I give myself a round of applause.
Well done.
Perfect. And I think a reason for, because there are many areas in countries where traditionally, if you're looking to buy, like, a buyer's agent wouldn't really look at Northern Beaches, but we can sort of go through today what's great about our area, and people have had a lot of success. We've got a lot of locals in the audience, and sort of other things to look for that aren't your traditional rental return, access to transport, access to this, because there's so much more to it. Like, why do you think Northern Beaches has had such great success in your very, very long career, Mark? Like, where you've seen property prices from back in your day. What
I'm
was a
not that
house then
old.
in Freshie?
I'm not that old. Jesus Christ! I sound
What
like
are
a
they in
war.
pounds?
You're making me sound like a war veteran.
So when you're buying
Vietnam.
houses in
Oh, when I was in
Freshwater for
World War II.
£4,000,
Well,
no. But
the
why
money
has
was
the
paper.
Northern? Yeah, yeah.
And look,
Why?
I'd love people in the audience to tell us also, help me out a little
Yes.
bit, but I love people in the audience to tell me why they truly love the beaches. Everyone's going to have a different thing top of mind, funnily enough. But I think, what was the question again?
Why do you think the Northern Beaches has had such great success, property growth? Well, my view, property growth. It may not have grown the fastest, but it's had phenomenal success in the last 20 years when
Yep.
it doesn't really have those key factors that your most investors would look for: transport, access to the city, the hospitals, what we do now. But like, it doesn't really, it has never really had the you could say your basic little things. We've just got the
Yeah.
water.
Yeah,
But
look,
that's our
I think
culture. What do you
I
reckon?
think
What do you?
I think fundamentally, when you look worldwide and you look at what underpins property, and I want and you know, talk about the northern beaches today, but what worldwide underpins property is proximity to a city and
Mm,
proximity to water. Anywhere in the world that offers those two things, generally they're pretty strong cities. They're pretty, and within those suburbs of those cities, the closer you are to that city, the closer you are to that water, that's where you actually underpin really good value. There's a second thing that I'm going to talk about in a moment that'll bring in that underpinning even further. It'll brace it even more. It'll give strength to it even more. But first of all, on that proximity, if we look around Sydney and apply those two elements that I just said, okay, you got Manly. Manly has got a ferry link, which makes proximity even easier to get into the city. Manly's also got surrounded not only by a harbour, which is very unique, but it's surrounded by a stunning beach, which is very unique. So it's got a double header when it comes to water, and it's close to the city, so it's a fucking cracker. You've got eastern suburbs of Sydney. There's, like Bondi, it's got the beach. It's really close to the city. You've got other harbourside suburbs like Mossman. They're on the water and they're only 15 minutes from the city. So you can now start to understand values in Sydney, or values even worldwide, when you look at that. That may even be like a lake in some cities rather than a harbour, or rather than a beach. So they're two really really big principles. Now, I get that the northern beaches, yes, in a bus at 37 minutes or 45 minutes, and I get but yes, we are right on the beach. But what you've got to understand is another thing called supply and demand. Now, if I'm making and you understand that very well with watches, if I make or jewelry or cars, if it's something that's very rare, it can potentially hold, or paintings, it can potentially hold great value because it's so rare. If it's in abundance, like dirt or sand, suddenly it's not worth as much because there's so much. And when we apply that principle to the northern beaches, I think that's part of why it's performed so well. Sorry to be talking so much, Michael, but
right.
I think that's why it's performed so. It was a big question.
I just put the chirping, like birds chirping background. Like,
I think that's crickets, isn't it? It's cricket.
yeah, crickets. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I'd love to
So
actually see that stat of land developed v land we have on the northern beaches, because I think we underestimate. We've got a shitload of land, but we've got very tight controls and not a lot of property to sort of backpin what you're going with what you're saying as well.
So if and I look at the delivery of our local paper. It's 100,000 deliveries go. So let's just say we've got 100,000 residents. I was waiting for that. If so, we've got 100,000 odd residences on the northern beaches. 100,000, right? Now, what I want to point our viewers to is, how has that changed? Because I know that when I look at places like Zetland or Mascot or Parramatta or Chatswood, I know that these guys, over a 40-year period, these numbers are going to scare you guys. Over a 40-year period, we've had suburbs like Zetland go from 2,000 to 4,000. Sounds big, doesn't it? Because you've doubled your volume in the suburb. What about 4,000 to 8,000? What about 8,000 to what? What about 8,000 to 16,000? I'm still talking about that region of Green Square. What about if we start blowing out to 30,000 units in that Green Square region? It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable how much they've snapped into that grid. It's scary. Now, let's bring that, and Parramatta, like you said, and those, a lot of train line suburbs just got absolutely obliterated with stock. And they've still held their prices really, really well. The good thing about the northern beaches is we may have had 2,000.
Yeah. So do you reckon the price growth is it's almost just the absolute lack of supply and there hasn't, or, well, it's almost, would you say what's been the most common factor, the lack of supply or the demand? Because
Well,
obviously for those areas that can increase their popular density from 2,000 to 16,000 and hold some really good prices, that's just phenomenal demand. Where for here, it's you would almost say probably more the absolute lack of supply and scarcity. That's really coming. What's that 100% mark?
Look, I think it's nice to think that we're that good, and the northern beaches. But at the end of the day, people, we haven't got shackles and balls on everyone. They can go anywhere in Sydney they want to go. So oh yeah, really good. We've got low supply, but at the end of the day, if it gets too exy for people, they'll just go to Hornsby. They'll just go to Chatswood. They'll just go to Lane Cove. They'll just go to Turramurra. They will move around to different areas of Sydney. There's a lot of immigrants I know that have just moved out west because it's just so cheap to raise a family, and that's where the majority of their family actually is. So there's this beautiful equalizer that we have. But look, the northern beaches of Sydney, and I think if we can step away, why else would you move there, Michael? What are the beautiful things that you've grown up with, schools and beaches, and what have you personally enjoyed about it?
I love here. It's I wouldn't say the beach because I've never really gone, but just more that sort of community. It's really, everybody really knows everybody. Especially going through school here, you'd throw a rock and you hit 5 people you know. So I think growing up and then going into real estate, same sort of thing. Everyone knows everyone. So it's almost like a today's version of that old country town. Where and I think being a real estate agent, we're quite fortunate that we've got access to that. So I've sort of really liked that as well. It's sort of got it's still got what you need to, it's still developed, but it's also got that sort of relaxed side of things as well. Like you go to the city and it's hustle and bustle and there's no real downtime. I find northern beaches, you can be in the heart of it. But then you can also just go 5 meters for the bushwalk to the beach or for a bike track, and you sort of feel like you're in a totally different world as well. So I think it's a good contrast for both lifestyles.
Yeah, it's I think sometimes that Mossman or that eastern suburbs of Sydney, I think sometimes it's got that School of Hard Knocks, New Yorker, feel to it, and it's like all or nothing. And I think the beach is definitely, where we work is got a really nice respect for balance of work and life. So, if you're into surfing, done. If you're into kayaking, done. If you're into walking, done. If you're into if you're a little bit rural, there's even parts of the northern beaches.
Warriewood, Eleonora, Terry Hills, that's 5-10 minutes away, and that feels like a different world. Like you've seen horses and goats up there. Lisa made a good point as well.
You like goats.
Yeah. Lisa made a good point as well. We've got no infrastructure. So, compared to a lot of developed areas, our infrastructure is probably at its infancy. And it's probably pretty exciting. Like, what do you see some key factors? Well, what do you want to see? What do you think? Well, maybe what do you think will happen in Northern Beaches infrastructure? We've spoken about the B-line, but that's what else? Where do you reckon that could grow? Because I've sort of
I think we've come from a good place. So I think we got our sorry, my phone rang. Oops. You back?
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, I think we've come from a good place. Like when our city travel times have exceeded an hour, we've generally done something about it. So the Clearways have been pumping, to fix that. The Beeline bus is our latest and greatest invention. pedestrian crossings. We've spent 300 million on the problem lately. I think now when we notice the new hospital, which is going to be an investment of over $2 billion, they've got that whole highway upgrade there. I think that's going to also take pressure off city transport. But I think where we're going with this is, some potential of where we're going with this. I personally think the ferry service. I know Manly Ferries has been doing better every year the last 5 years, but our ferry service from Manly takes us into the city, and it should have other options. Our ferry service should be able to take us into Mossman. Our ferry
that's probably
service
the lowest hanging fruit to improve that sort of time into the city, don't you reckon? Like tunnels, bridges, all that shit has to be built. And I suppose a lot of that goes public as well, domain, for everyone's opinion. But I think who manages that? I've never really ever, if they want to do that run, I don't believe they have to go up to like public exhibition, like a road or putting up a stop sign. So that could be the fastest solution.
Yeah. And, it's quite a beautiful way to travel, and that ferry service, if we do that, that can push us in to so many different parts of Sydney. There is the ability, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I got no idea about ferries or services, but I would think there's the ability for the ferry to take you into Parramatta. You know what I mean? It's because it's the same
Central
waterway. It can go out and around Central Coast, but you've got to go out the heads, I think, to do that. But there's other things, but other great things about DY, other great things about we've got very good shopping.
Yep. And
for the ladies. That one's for the ladies.
Yeah. Well, Lisa's on. So I also think once our infrastructure continues, I still feel there's room for the housing pricing to double on the northern beaches over the next 5 or 10 years, because we've had such strong growth and stability, like because of just the lifestyle, the culture, to live by the water. Like, you can't take that away from a community. I think it's a safe area,
and I know. It's safe. Like, I reckon, for my kids to like, I know I grew up with Diploma High School, which wasn't that safe if you read some of the articles in the last couple of years in the news, but I felt pretty safe. But it is a really, really safe place for people to bring up kids. It's a big family area. Where I think we take a lot of things for granted worldwide, and particularly on the northern beaches. Like, we don't have any massive issues, I may be ignorant because, we are blessed with our families around us and stuff like that. But I think on balance, when we look at numbers of crime and we look at numbers of hardship, I think Northern Beaches is probably quite a strong place to live, because it doesn't have a lot of exposure to that for whatever reason. And I don't mean to be I don't mean to say that to be ignorant or not thankful, but I think it's a really, really good place to plonk your family.
And I also think where we're going with this as well is when you're looking to buy a property or live, it's really, you're buying for the long game. So when Northern Beaches may not have that rental, like I said, those basics a buyer, advocate, or an investor would look for, but it's got so much more to it, which you can get, that you can sort of think, well, if an area has that infrastructure in its community and that soul to it, then it only can get better. So I'm buying this investment for 10, 20 years, and I'm excited to see the capital growth I'm going to get when an area has that sort of ethos around it. And I think that's why a lot of people buy to the Northern Beaches, where they're either just had great experiences and they're just, you don't want to take them away. Like, they're loyal to the Northern Beaches. And when you've got that with low supply, then that's where it's safe to have an investment. And I stress, it may not tick the box of the rental yields, but you can still get that. We've got phenomenal properties with high yields, or that infrastructure, because I know, especially on that commercial precinct with a lot of foreign buyers, they don't even look here because it just doesn't have those core train lines that they look for. But universities. But it does not mean that it's not a great investment area. So when a lot of people aren't looking, it opens the door for the people who know what to look for. And I think that's where we're going with a little bit of this talk. Yes, we're relating it to Northern Beaches because it's our backyard, but I'm sure like in people like Jeff's area, people's area, you've got these little community and pockets where you can see the underlying value and the long-term play there compared to other areas. So I think that's where a big point of it.
And I wanted to serve it up a little bit as well, because sometimes you just don't know, you know, and sometimes it's just not discussed. You can't find that information anywhere. So that's what today was about. Do we have any comments or any questions from any viewers or statements on the beaches there, Michael?
Yeah, just Todd agrees 100% with the diverse suburbs with the sea and harbour, Pittwater further north. By diverse, I mean between bush, water and culture. 100%, that's what we're saying. You're like, Northern Beaches, within 5 minutes, you've got everything. Your beach, your hustle and bustle, your country life. Strive to always do better with infrastructure and roads.
Yeah.
It will come. The more I do find,
costs money.
It costs money. There needs to be louder voices demanding it, and the more people that come, the louder the voice. So that happens through there. Northern Beaches, Lisa, and then I think send them over to Chatswood. Jeff, I think Jeff's out Chatswood way. Lisa said people are so nice. So it's true. So I think there's a lot of things. Yeah, you can't get this information online. So I think that's where we wanted to go with today.
Awesome.
All righty, guys.
Thank you, guys. Yeah. Hope we helped you about the beaches, telling everyone a little bit more about the beaches, people from the beaches. They're giving it some love.
You. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
See you, mate. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.